What if I told you Georgia had Jaylen Carter on their roster in 2025? Jaylen Carter, the guy that just won the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, the guy that was probably the best defensive lineman in that game. And that's saying something because Chris Jones for the Chiefs was pretty good. What if I told you Jaylen Carter was coming back to play for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2025? Would that change your opinion about where they're at on the defensive line? Would it change your feeling about where they're at defensively? Would it change your feeling about if they're going to win the national championship or not? The repeated Southeastern Conference champions. Would it change your mind about Georgia heading into 2025? It would change my mind a little bit because I know what Jaylen Carter's like, and he is as disruptive a defensive lineman as Georgia's had, and he wasn't even a starter on the 2021 team. If you listen closely to what Warren Brinson told Mark Weiser on Wednesday at Pro Day, Georgia does have Jaylen Carter on their team, and his name is Elijah Griffin. Here's what Warren Brinson said about Griffin. He said he's the next Jaylen Carter. Oh yeah, he's legit. Now, a lot of caveats. Okay, first of all, uh, just because the guy says it doesn't make it true. A lot of times players get a little over their skis about this sort of stuff. But it was a very curious comment. I mean, when you think about Griffin, who played as Savannah Christian, he really, was extremely productive for them. 53 tackles, 27 of those for loss, 8.5 sacks in 9 games last year. When he was a junior, he had 17.5 sacks. He was extremely productive. So Ryan Curley and I went to watch him play the first game of I think it was his first game. It was the first, legitimate weekend of high school football in Georgia in 2023. And look, here's the setup for this. Georgia was playing the directional school the next day, whoever it was. Carson Beck's first start was that day. So we rode down to Atlanta, and we go watch Savannah Christian play Marist. Now, here's my background on Marist. It was one of my high school growing up. They were kind of our rival at the time. They were not a traditional rival, but we played them so much. And a lot of the kids that lived where I went to Marist. We didn't like Marist. Still don't like them. But the fact of the matter is that let's put that aside. But I do want to be completely transparent on that front. The thing to remember about when you watch a prospect play for Marist or against Marist is a private school that has run the same offense for decades. They do not run a traditional offense. The high school I went to for decades did not run a traditional offense either. So you're looking at stuff sometimes differently. When we watched Elijah Griffin play, it was not unbelievable. However, the problem was he was playing Marist, and you're playing an option-based team, and I would say it's challenging to get a real good read on a guy when he's playing an option-based team. Just having done this a long time, it's not always obvious that a really dominant defensive lineman is dominant in high school. Now, I say all that, and I will buttress that with, I saw Jaylen Carter play in high school too. And Jaylen Carter was not unbelievable in high school the time I saw him play. And all I can do in my time in doing this is, all I do is go off the time I see guys play. Like, that's the most important thing for me, is when I see a person play live, because I saw them play live. I mean, like, it's not highlights. It's, I'm making the effort. Like, it took us, I would say, 3 hours to get down and back because it was traffic. Where Marist is located in Atlanta is not an easy place to get to from Athens. So, it wasn't that bad that night. I was kind of shocked as quick as we got there. And when you watched them move and run and all that was all there. But like, in terms of being completely dominant, it wasn't that night. But I have to say, it was a lot of who they were playing and how they had to play as a result. If what Warren Brinson is saying is true, I think that changes things fundamentally for Georgia. I think that means that you're talking about a defensive line that I wouldn't say they're going to be better than they were last year, but it's very possible that they wouldn't have lost so much from last year. You're talking about losing Nazir Stackhouse. I mean, I saw Nazir at Stevenson. I watched him play a couple times. I remember very clearly watching him play Grayson. They thought that they could win that game, and I was like, "There's no shot you're going to win that game." But Nazir really played well in that game against Grayson. I can't remember what year that was, but Warren Brinson the same way. Warren was Warren got better over time. So I think, to me, if you're talking about a dominant defensive lineman, the likes of which Georgia has had a lot of lately, that's a very different conversation than, what you're coming into this thing from a perspective of they've lost a lot of guys. I mean, when I saw Isaiah Gibson play in Southwest, play at Lee County, the body, it's all there, man. Like the length, he looks a lot like Mikael Williams in terms of just the way he looked. Brandon Cox, Mikael Williams, those long, big-bodied guys, but with long limbs. That's what you got there. And, you're starting to fill in some pieces on the defensive line and the defensive front. I think it's a part of Georgia that is, naturally you'd say, well, what's the concern there? What are you looking at? Who's going to be better against the run? How are they going to, all that stuff? Because they lost a lot of guys. I'm not even mentioning outside guys like Mikael, Chaz Chambliss, etc. Smile Munden in the front seven. They lost a lot of really good players. Mikael Williams was out a lot last year. Smile Munden was out a lot last year. So it's, Raylan Wilson, C.J. Allen, they got some really good linebackers for sure. Justin Williams, they got some really good linebackers. But these younger defensive linemen, they're going to have to play, and they're going to have to be good. If Griffin is as good as Warren Brinson is saying, if he's, quote, the next Jaylen Carter, how fast will it take him to be Jaylen Carter? Because if this is a matter of it's going to take as long as it took for Jalen to be completely dominant, I mean, Jaylen Carter, I don't know what people remember and what they don't. Jaylen Carter scored a touchdown on offense in 2020. In his third game as a college football player, he scored a touchdown receiving the ball from Stetson Bennett. I mean, Jaylen Carter, when I saw him play, was his team's punter. That guy could do a lot of stuff. So, but he wasn't, you started really being like, man, this guy's killing everybody. You started seeing that really in 22, I would say, his last season at Georgia. But, like, killing people. But I'm sure he flashed more than I noticed, but it got covered up, so to speak, because of how many other good players were on that front. Jordan Davis was a cultural phenomenon. You had, Nakobe was in the front, but on the defensive line, you had a number 1 overall draft pick. You had a first runner in Jalen and Jordan Davis. There's a lot of J's in this talk, but the blocked field goal against Alabama in the national championship game was Jaylen Carter. The block field goal, the block extra point against Kentucky. This is all going off memory. That was Jaylen Carter. Jaylen Carter was ready to party at any moment in terms of being a good player on the field. Is that what you're going to get with Elijah Griffin? I mean, I don't know. But when guys talk like that, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt. We don't know what that's really going to be like when he's really playing at Georgia. G-Day will be a good way to look at things and just see. But I'm going to tell you, man, if they've got that coupled with those linebackers, Georgia's defense is really going to be pretty solid. Now, 21 solid, I don't know about that, but with the way that the offenses in this league have sort of regressed a little bit, um, it's very possible they got exactly what they needed. We all knew Griffin was going to be a good player. Now it's up to him. Let's just see how good. I mean, if he's in the universe of Jaylen Carter, if he is just a first round draft pick, that's a really good thing.